SD, Mary's General Hospital, a symbol of medical excellence in a quiet well of suburban community, was about to face a challenge it didn't expect. When Angela Parker, a skilled and compassionate black nurse, joined the staff, she arrived, eager to contribute but unaware of the unspoken barriers she would soon encounter. She had no idea that behind the polished floors and polite greetings, deep-seated prejudices still lingered. As tensions slowly rose and quiet conflicts emerged, a seemingly ordinary patient, Thomas Edwards, watched everything unfold from his hospital bed. But Mr. Edwards wasn't just another patient. His quiet presence would soon play a surprising role in what was to come. What hidden truth surrounded this silent observer? And how could one nurse's quiet struggle spark change in a place built on tradition? Let's find out. But before we begin, share in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories that explore quiet strength, hidden tensions, and moments of justice, don't forget to subscribe. The spotless halls of SD. Mary's gleamed beneath bright fluorescent lights as Angela Parker stepped inside for the first time. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled the air, but beneath it was a more subtle feeling, an undercurrent of tension that made her stomach flutter with unease. Still, she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin, focused on making a strong first impression. As she approached the nurse's station, she couldn't ignore the subtle shift in the atmosphere. Conversations that had filled the space suddenly fell to whispers. A few eyes flicked toward her, then quickly turned away, as if unsure whether to look at all. It wasn't open hostility, just a quiet, uncomfortable energy that spoke volumes. Angela took a steady breath, willing herself not to be shaken. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm and even. "I'm Angela Parker, the new nurse. Could you direct me to the head nurse's office?" A blonde nurse looked up. Her eyes widened slightly with surprise before she covered it with a practiced, polite smile. "Of course," she replied coolly. "Down the hall, third door on the right." Angela gave a small nod in thanks and started down the corridor, feeling the weight of silent stairs behind her. The sound of her sensible shoes echoed in the unusually quiet hallway, each step sharp and deliberate. As she neared the designated office, a tall man in a white coat stepped out from a nearby room. His salt and pepper hair and calm, confident posture suggested he held a senior role. His presence seemed to carry authority, but not arrogance. Angela's heart picked up slightly. Perhaps this was someone she could connect with professionally, someone who might judge her on her abilities rather than assumptions, and in that moment, without a word exchanged, she held onto the hope that things could be different. That her journey at SD, Mary's, though already off to a shaky start, might still find steady ground. "Good morning, Doctor," Angela said, offering a warm smile. "I'm Angela Parker, the new nurse starting today. It's a pleasure to meet you." The doctor's steel-grey eyes glanced over her, his expression unreadable. "Dr. William Gavs," he replied briskly. "I trust you've already been briefed on our protocols." Before Angela could answer, Dr. Gavs continued, "We hold ourselves to very high standards here at SD. Mary's, I expect you are prepared to meet them." Without waiting for a response, he stepped past her and walked away, leaving Angela standing alone in the hallway. Her hand, still extended for a handshake, dropped slowly to her side. The encounter left her feeling disheartened but not defeated. Angela took a steadying breath, straightened her posture, and turned to knock on the head nurse's office door. As she waited, her thoughts drifted back to her days in nursing school. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, firm, proud, and protective. "Baby girl," she had said, "you're going to have to fight twice as hard as the rest. But don't you ever let them see you sweat. You come from a line of strong women, and that strength runs in you too." Angela remembered the long nights spent studying, the extra shifts in the lab, and the constant pressure to prove herself. She recalled the subtle slights from professors, the surprised looks when she topped an exam, and the quiet whispers from classmates questioning if she really belonged. But through it all, Angela had kept going, focused, steady, and determined. She had graduated at the top of her class, her dedication, discipline, and skill silencing even her harshest critics. Now, standing in the halls of SD, Mary's, Angela Parker drew strength from those memories. She had faced challenges before. She had overcome them, and she was ready to do it again. The office door opened, revealing a middle-aged woman with a firm expression and sharp posture. "Miss Parker, I presume?" she said, her tone brisk. "Come in. We have a lot to go over, and I expect you to keep up." Angela followed the head nurse into the office, but a feeling lingered, a sense that this was more than just the start of a new job. The air in the hospital carried something underneath its polished routine. A subtle tension hung in the atmosphere, like a silent storm waiting to break beneath the surface of professional smiles and clinical order. What Angela didn't yet realize was that her arrival would soon spark something far greater, a slow but steady challenge to the status quo at St. Mary's. Her presence would become a catalyst, forcing the institution to confront the biases and unspoken norms that had long gone unchecked behind its prestigious reputation. The rest of her first day moved quickly, an overwhelming blur of orientations, introductions, and paperwork. She made her rounds through the hospital, trying to absorb procedures while navigating the unfamiliar layout. But even through the busy pace, she began to notice patterns, small moments that stuck. Conversations would fall quiet when she approached, only to pick back up in hushed tones once she passed. Her efforts to make friendly conversation with other nurses were returned with polite but distant responses. There were no raised voices, no outright hostility, just a quiet, persistent exclusion that settled around her like a shadow. This was supposed to be a team, a place built on cooperation and shared purpose. Instead, Angela felt like a guest in a space where she was meant to belong. By the time her shift ended, exhaustion had set in, but not just from the workload. It was the emotional weight of feeling othered, of having to prove herself all over again in an environment that didn't seem ready to welcome her. Angela felt drained mentally and emotionally by the time she gathered her belongings from her locker. As she closed the door, she caught whispers coming from just around the corner. Two nurses were speaking in hushed tones. "Did you see the new hire?" One murmured. "Yeah," the other replied. "I don't know what they were thinking. This isn't exactly the neighborhood for, you know." Angela's hand paused mid-motion, her breath catching. Her heart sank. She had hoped the coldness she felt earlier was just part of being the newcomer, first day nerves, maybe. But now the reality was undeniable. This wasn't just a new job. It was going to be a daily struggle, one filled with prejudice and quiet judgment. As she walked out of the hospital, the weight of it all pressed down on her shoulders. The excitement she had felt that morning had all but vanished, replaced by a heavy knot of doubt and isolation. At the bus stop, she sat on the hard plastic bench, her thoughts racing. Then she pulled out her phone and called a number she knew by heart. After 2 rings, a warm, familiar voice answered. "Hey baby girl, how was your first day?" The moment Angela heard her mother's voice, tears stuck her eyes. She took a shaky breath, doing her best to hold it together. "It was tough, Mama," she whispered. A pause followed. Then her mother spoke again, her voice steady and full of knowing strength. "Angela Marie Parker, listen to me. You've worked too hard and come too far to let anyone make you feel small. Remember who you are, and remember where you come from. You're not just walking those halls for yourself, you're doing it for every little black girl who dreams of being where you are someday." Angela closed her eyes and let the words sink in, anchoring her spirit. "I know, Mama," she said softly. "I just didn't expect it to be this hard." Her mother didn't hesitate. "Baby, nothing worth doing ever is." "Baby," her mother said gently, "you carry the strength of generations inside you. Walk tall, do your job better than anyone else, and don't you dare let them see you stumble. You hear me?" "Yes, Mama," Angela replied, her voice steadier now. A renewed resolve settled in her chest. "I hear you." As the call ended, Angela noticed a sleek black Mercedes easing past the bus stop. Through the tinted window, she caught sight of Dr. Greaves. His eyes met hers for just a second before the car accelerated and disappeared down the street, straightening her back. Angela let her mother's words echo in her mind like armor. The road ahead would be hard, but she wasn't walking it alone. Her strength came not just from within, but from every woman before her who'd faced the same fight and kept moving. As the bus pulled up, Angela stood, ready to face another day. What she didn't yet know was that her presence at St. Mary's wasn't just about doing her job, it was the spark that would ignite a transformation. A quiet revolution was about to unfold, one that would force the hospital to confront the biases it had buried under decades of silence and tradition. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere at St. Mary's simmered with slow building tension. Each day added weight to Angela Parker's already difficult workload. The cold shoulders and polite distance of her first day had morphed into something more subtle and more damaging. It wasn't outright hostility. It was in the looks, the tone, the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room, Angela began to notice the difference more clearly with each shift, how her white colleagues were given easier assignments, friendlier patients, more support. Meanwhile, she was handed the most difficult cases. Day after day, Dr. William Greaves seemed especially intent on undermining her. No matter how carefully she followed protocol or how professionally she handled situations, he found fault. Nurse Parker. His voice rang out one morning from across the nurses' station. I trust you've taken the time to thoroughly review our procedures. We can't afford mistakes. His emphasis on the last word was deliberate, sharp. A chill ran up Angela's spine. She turned to face him with calm professionalism. Of course, Dr. Greaves. I'm well acquainted with all hospital policies. He raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at one corner of his mouth. We'll see about that, won't we? Let's hope you learned everything you need here. The barely disguised condescension wasn't lost on Angela or on the other nurses pretending to focus on their charts while clearly listening as Dr. Greaves walked away. Angela felt the pressure of silent judgment settle over her again. The rest of the day followed a now familiar pattern. While others were given routine patients, Angela was repeatedly assigned the most demanding, emotionally draining tasks. Angela, a nurse called with a sugary tone that didn't match her words. Would you mind taking Mr. Johnson in 305? He's been a bit of a handful today. Angela offered a brief nod, swallowing her frustration. This was the reality she faced, but she wasn't about to let it break her. Angela nodded, fully aware that challenging was putting it mildly. Mr. Johnson had a reputation for his racist tirades and had already reduced two nurses to tears that week. Still, Angela approached the task with quiet resolve, determined to carry herself with the professionalism that had brought her this far. As she stepped into Mr. Johnson's room, she braced herself for the inevitable storm of hatred. What are you doing here? He spat the moment he laid eyes on her. I told them I don't want no colored nurse touching me. Angela drew in a slow, steady breath, steeling herself against the venom. Mr. Johnson, I'm here to check your vitals and change your dressing. I assure you, I am fully qualified to handle your care, despite the barrage of slurs and insults hurled at her. Angela performed her duties with calm precision, not allowing his bigotry to shake her focus. She moved with grace and efficiency, tending to his needs while blocking out the poison in his words. When she finally stepped out into the hallway, she found Dr. Greaves waiting with a carefully composed look of mock concern. Everything all right in there, Nurse Parker? He asked, his tone laced with forced politeness. Sounded like quite a commotion. Angela met his eyes evenly. Mr. Johnson's vitals are stable, and his dressing has been changed. Was there anything else you needed, Dr. Greaves? A flicker of surprise crossed his face before his familiar smirk returned. Let's hope you can keep that composure with all your patients. We wouldn't want any complaints, would we? As he walked off, Angela was left with the unsettling sense that she had just passed a test, one that she never should have had to take. The remainder of her shift blurred into a series of never-ending tasks and unspoken slights. Angela found herself triple-checking every detail, not because she lacked confidence in her abilities, but because she knew any mistake, no matter how minor, would be amplified and held against her. Throughout the day, the stark contrast in treatment became increasingly evident. Her white colleagues moved through their shifts with ease, laughing and chatting, while Angela bore the burden of the hardest assignments and constant scrutiny. The imbalance was unmistakable. Each time she thought about speaking up, her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Don't you dare let them see you falter. By the end of the shift, Angela was physically drained and emotionally frayed. Angela felt completely drained physically and emotionally as she gathered her belongings from her locker. Nearby, she overheard two nurses whispering, unaware she could hear them. Can you believe they're making such a big deal about diversity hires? One sneered, her voice full of contempt. It's not like they can actually keep up with the rest of us. Angela's hand froze on her locker door. Her heart pounded, a mix of rage and humiliation rushing through her. She longed to speak up, to challenge their ignorance, to defend her skills and hard-earned place, but deep down, she knew it would only confirm the stereotypes they already clung to. Instead, she shut her locker with quiet resolve and walked out of the hospital, her posture upright even as the burden of the day pressed heavily on her shoulders. The bus stop, the familiar black Mercedes she'd seen before pulled up. The tinted window rolled down, and there was Dr. Greaves behind the wheel, his smile laced with mock sympathy. Nurse Parker, he called out smoothly. Still taking the bus? That's unfortunate. But I guess it's all a nurse's salary gets you, right? Before Angela could respond, he drove off, tires humming against the road, leaving her standing in a cloud of quiet fury. His cutting remark wasn't just cruel, it was a reminder of the uphill struggle she faced every single day at SD. Mary's climbing onto the bus. Angela's mind swirled with emotion. The hope and enthusiasm she once felt when starting at the hospital now seemed like a distant dream replaced by a cold, fierce determination to endure. She was no longer naive. This wasn't just a job, it was a battlefield. Yet amid the chaos of her thoughts, a quiet voice stirred inside her, a voice that reminded her change was necessary. Something had to shift. The real question was, would she be the one to break under this pressure, or would her strength finally force the system to crack? Unbeknownst to Angela, help was closer than she imagined. An unexpected ally was about to enter her world, someone who would challenge the injustice and bring long-buried truths to light at SD. Mary's General Hospital. As the bus rolled through the dusky streets, Angela closed her eyes, drawing strength from her mother's words and the legacy of endurance that lived within her. Tomorrow would be another fight, but she was ready for it. Whatever came her way, she would meet it head on. The next morning, Angela arrived at SD. Mary's with a sense of renewed determination. The long night had given her time to reflect on everything she'd endured, everything she stood for. She reminded herself of her core purpose, to help people, not for recognition, and certainly not for approval, but because it was who she was, someone who cared, no matter the background of her patients or the obstacles she faced herself. As she walked toward the nurses' station, she sensed an unusual buzz in the air. Nurses were moving quickly, prepping a room with uncommon urgency. There was an anticipation that didn't quite match the usual morning chaos. "What's going on?" Angela asked one of her colleagues, curiosity piqued by the flurry of activity. The nurse, momentarily letting go of the usual coldness she reserved for Angela, replied with barely contained excitement. "VIP patient coming in. Some big-name guy skiing accident. Both arms broken, from what I heard." Before Angela could ask more, Dr. Greaves appeared, his expression stern and unreadable. "Nurse Parker," he said curtly. "Room for 112. Mr. Thomas Edwards. Severe skiing accident. Both arms fractured. I want you on this case. Give him top-tier care and full attention." Angela nodded, recognizing the deeper meaning behind the assignment. Another test. Another challenge. "Of course, Dr. Greaves. I'll handle it right away." As she walked down the corridor to room for 112, a strange feeling lingered in her chest. There was something different about this case, something unspoken in the way people were reacting to the patient's arrival. She couldn't help but feel this assignment carried more weight than it appeared. When she entered the room, she saw a middle-aged man lying in the hospital bed. Both arms were wrapped in thick white casts, propped gently with cushions. Despite his obvious discomfort, he exuded a quiet authority, composed, observant. "Good morning, Mr. Edwards." Angela greeted him warmly as she approached. "I'm Nurse Angela Parker. I'll be caring for you during your stay, Mr." Edwards looked up at her. His gaze was sharp, analytical, but not unkind. "Good morning, Nurse Parker," he replied. His voice was stronger than she expected. "Thank you. I must admit, I didn't imagine I'd end up in a hospital bed after a weekend on the slopes." Angela smiled as she began checking his vitals, her movements calm and methodical. All the while, she could feel his eyes following her, not in suspicion, but with a kind of thoughtful curiosity. Unlike some of the patients she dealt with, there was no sign of condescension or bias, just genuine interest. "You seem very capable, Nurse Parker," Mr. Edwards said, watching her adjust his form. "How long have you been working here at SD?" Mary's. Angela paused, caught a little off guard by the sincerity in his tone. "I've been here a few weeks now, sir," she replied carefully. "It's been quite a learning experience, Mr." Edwards raised an eyebrow, clearly noting the diplomacy in her response. "I see," he said simply. A trace of amusement laced Mr. Edwards' voice as he asked, "And how have you found the hospital so far? Living up to its prestigious reputation, I hope?" Angela hesitated, uncertain how to answer. Before she could respond, Dr. Greaves entered the room, his usual cold demeanor replaced by an overly enthusiastic smile Angela had never seen before. "Mr. Edwards," he exclaimed, his voice drenched in forced warmth. "I trust Nurse Parker has been taking excellent care of you. We only assign our finest staff to our most valued patients. Angela kept her expression neutral, fully aware that Dr. Greaves had never shown any confidence in her abilities until now. Mr. Edwards, perceptive as ever, seemed to catch the dissonance. Indeed, Dr. Greaves, he replied, his eyes moving between the doctor and Angela. Nurse Parker has been exemplary. I was just asking her about her time here at SD. Mary's. Dr. Greaves' smile faltered briefly before recovering. Well, I'm sure she'll tell you it's been a wonderful experience. We pride ourselves on maintaining an inclusive and supportive environment at SD. Mary's Angela's jaw tightened at the blatant hypocrisy, though she remained composed. Mr. Edwards, however, didn't miss the tension. Is that so? He mused, studying Angela intently. Well, I look forward to seeing this supportive environment in action during my stay. As Dr. Greaves launched into a detailed description of Mr. Edwards' treatment plan, Angela couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just occurred. Mr. Edwards pointed questions, the way he looked at her as though he saw beneath SD. Mary's polished exterior left her with a sense of cautious hope. In the days that followed, Angela found herself spending more time with Mr. Edwards than with any other patient. Despite his injuries, he remained sharp and inquisitive, frequently asking about her background and experiences. Unlike many others in the hospital, he seemed genuinely interested in her responses, showing no trace of the prejudice Angela had come to expect. Then, one afternoon, while changing his bandages, Angela overheard a conversation outside the room. That made her blood run cold. I don't care what Dr. Greaves says, a nurse whispered harshly. I don't trust that Parker woman with our VIP patient. Who knows what she might do? I know, another voice replied. But we can't say anything, or they'll call us racist. Angela's hands trembled as she finished the bandage, the familiar weight of suspicion and bias settling on her shoulders again. Mr. Edwards, ever observant, caught the change in her demeanor. Is everything all right, Nurse Parker? He asked, gently, his voice laced with concern. Angela managed a polite smile. Of course, Mr. Edwards, just making sure your bandages are done properly. He paused for a moment, quietly observing her. You know, he said thoughtfully, I've always believed that a person's true nature is revealed not by how they treat their superiors, but by how they treat those they consider beneath them. Angela looked up, surprised by the weight of his words. Mr. Edwards held her gaze with a look that suggested he saw more than he let on. I've seen a lot in my time, Nurse Parker, he continued, and I must say, the view from this bed has been enlightening. Before Angela could reply, Dr. Greaves strode in, effectively ending their conversation. As she stepped out of the room, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Edwards was more than just a high-profile patient. His sharp insights and quiet observations hinted at a deeper awareness of the toxic dynamics that lurked within the walls of SD. Mary's, for the first time since joining the hospital, Angela felt a flicker of hope, perhaps not all-powerful. People were blind to what was happening, unbeknownst to her. Mr. Edwards' presence was about to spark a series of events that would shake SD. Mary's to its core, pulling back the curtain on the systemic bias and prejudice that had festered beneath its polished exterior for years. In the days that followed, Angela's sense of isolation only deepened. The subtle coldness from her peers had escalated into overt hostility. Whispers trailed her in hallways. Sharp glances cut through conversations, and the atmosphere grew more unbearable by the day. Dr. Greaves, growing bolder in the absence of accountability, became more blatant in his attempts to discredit her. One morning, as Angela reviewed patient charts at the nurse's station, he approached her with a thick stack of files in hand. Nurse Parker, he said smoothly, his tone laced with full sympathy. I need you to take over these cases today. They're particularly complex, but I trust you're capable. Angela eyed the files easily twice the number her colleagues were managing, and then met his gaze head-on, refusing to show any reaction. Of course, Dr. Greaves, she said calmly. I'll get started immediately. As he walked away, a smug grin tugging at his lips, Angela heard him murmur under his breath, let's see how she manages this. The rest of her day blurred into a storm of back-to-back responsibilities. The patients she had been assigned were some of the most difficult in the hospital, medically complicated, emotionally demanding, or simply resistant to care. Yet, even under this relentless pressure, Angela pushed through, determined not to break. Angela refused to compromise her standards. She approached every patient with the same level of care and professionalism, even as exhaustion slowly crept in. but the relentless pressure was beginning to wear her down physically and emotionally while hurrying to respond to yet another call light. Angela overheard two of her colleagues whispering nearby. "Can you believe they're letting her handle all the critical cases?" one nurse muttered, her tone laced with disdain. "It's like they're just waiting for her to screw up." "I know," the other replied. "But honestly, it's impressive she's still standing. I would broken by now." Angela felt a wave of anger and pain crash over her, knowing her colleagues not only saw how unfairly she was being treated, but were watching to see if she would fail, was nearly unbearable. As the day dragged on, Angela found herself returning more and more to Mr. Edwards's room. Unlike the rest of the hospital, his space had become a kind of refuge, a quiet place where she could breathe and feel, even briefly, like someone truly recognized her worth. "Nurse Parker," Mr. Edwards greeted warmly as she entered for a routine check. "You look worn out. Everything all right?" Angela gave a tired smile. "Just a busy day, Mr. Edwards. Nothing I can't handle." He studied her face with genuine concern. "You know," he said gently, "there's a difference between surviving and thriving, and from what I've seen, you're more than capable of the latter." His words, though kind, only emphasized the growing contrast between his encouragement and the indifference or hostility she received from everyone else. A lump formed in her throat. The weight of her isolation threatened to consume her. "Thank you, Mr. Edwards," she murmured. "I appreciate that." As she turned to leave, he called out, his voice calm but firm. "Nurse Parker, sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to speak up." Angela paused, his words echoing in her mind as she walked back to the nurse's station. Something inside her shifted. She couldn't explain it, but she knew change was coming. What she didn't realize was that the next day would bring the very moment that would push her to the edge and force a reckoning that had been building since her first day at St. Mary's. The following morning, Angela arrived to find the hospital abuzz with tension. Rumors were spreading. A high-stakes emergency operation was scheduled for later that day, with hospital board members and high-profile visitors expected to observe. As Angela began her rounds, she immediately sensed the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. The entire hospital buzzed with nervous energy. Nurses and doctors alike were visibly on edge. The pressure of the upcoming emergency surgery weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Midway through her morning tasks, Dr. Greaves approached her, his expression unreadable, but with a glint in his eye that instantly raised her guard. "Nurse Parker," he said in a carefully measured tone, "we'll need you to assist in this afternoon's emergency procedure. It's a critical case. I trust you're ready for the responsibility." Angela felt a wave of both surprise and suspicion. Being selected for such a high-stakes operation was usually considered an honor, but coming from Dr. Greaves, it felt loaded. Was this truly about trust in her abilities, or something else? "Of course, Dr. Greaves," she replied calmly, her tone composed. "I'll be ready." As he walked away, Angela caught him quietly saying to another physician, "Let's see how she performs under pressure. This could get interesting." The hours before the operation flew by in a whirlwind of checklists and preparation. Angela immersed herself in the work, reviewing every detail twice, even 3 times, determined to be as ready as possible. While scrubbing in, she noticed the sideways glances from a few staff members, skeptical, perhaps even doubtful. She inhaled deeply, summoning her strength. Her mother's voice rang in her memory. "Don't you dare let them see you falter." As the operation commenced, Angela joined Dr. Greaves and several other senior surgeons in the sterile, high-stakes atmosphere of the operating room. The tension was thick, intensified by the presence of high-level observers tracking every movement, but Angela stayed composed. Her actions were swift and exact. She anticipated the surgeon's needs with practiced ease, handing of instruments, before they even asked, her years of dedication and experience unmistakably shining through. Then, something unsettling caught her eye. Dr. Greaves, normally poised and confident, was hesitating. His hand trembled slightly as he prepared to make a critical incision. In that instant, Angela's pulse quickened. She realized he was about to make a potentially catastrophic error, and without a moment's hesitation, she acted. Angela spoke up, her voice calm but resolute. "Dr. Greaves," she said, "I believe we might get better access from another angle. Given the patient's anatomy, it may be the safer option." A hush fell over the operating room. All eyes turned to her. Dr. Greaves stared, his expression flickering between surprise and irritation. For a tense moment, Angela feared he would outright reject her input, but then, with the faintest nod, he adjusted his position and followed her recommendation. As the procedure continued, it became evident that Angela's intervention had likely prevented a critical error. When the surgery concluded successfully, Angela felt the weight of numerous gazes, some filled with respect, others, especially Dr. Greaves's, burning with silent fury. While they cleaned up, Dr. Greaves leaned in, his voice low and threatening. "Nurse Parker, a word. Now." Angela's heart raced as she followed him out of the OR. She knew she had done the right thing, but also that speaking out might have just jeopardized her career. To her surprise, they entered a patient's room. Mr. Edwards's, she realized, belatedly. In the stress of surgery, she'd forgotten he was still admitted. Dr. Greaves, however, seemed too furious to care. As soon as the door shut behind them, he rounded on her, his face flushed with rage. "How dare you question me in front of my team?" he spat. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to? You're lucky I don't fire you right here, right now." Angela stood firm, her voice steady. "I did what was necessary for the patient's safety. Your job," he snapped, his voice rising, "is to follow instructions, not to act like you know better than your superiors. This is exactly why people like you don't belong at SD. Mary's, you're not here because of talent. You're here because someone wanted to check a diversity box." With every word, his anger grew uglier, his tone openly hostile, his bias no longer concealed. Angela felt a storm of emotions: shock, hurt, fury, but she refused to look away. Just as she opened her mouth to respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Dr. Greaves." It was Mr. Edwards. His voice, though soft, carried undeniable authority. "You seem to have forgotten where you are and who you're speaking to." Both Angela and Dr. Greaves turned in surprise. Mr. Edwards was sitting upright in his bed, his expression calm but edged with unmistakable anger. "Mr. Edwards," Dr. Greaves stammered, his complexion paling as the realization of his misstep dawned on him. "I didn't realize you were awake. My apologies if I disturbed you." "Oh, I'm very much awake, Dr. Greaves," Mr. Edwards responded coolly, his eyes narrowing. "And I've been awake long enough to witness the disgraceful way you and others in this hospital have treated Nurse Parker." Angela stood, frozen, stunned by what she was hearing. The quiet, reserved patient she had barely noticed before now radiated an undeniable authority. The very air in the room shifted with his presence. "Mr. Edwards," Dr. Greaves began, his voice now unsteady. "There's been a misunderstanding." "No," Mr. Edwards cut in sharply. "There's been no misunderstanding. What I've seen during my stay is a consistent pattern of bias, mistreatment, and outright discrimination. And it ends here." His words hung in the air like a verdict. In that moment, both Angela and Dr. Greaves began to understand that Mr. Edwards was far more than a VIP patient. The commanding tone in his voice, the way he carried himself, it was unmistakable. This was a man of considerable influence. Who are you?" Dr. Greaves asked, his earlier arrogance now completely dissolved. "MR. Edwards offered a tight, cold smile devoid of any warmth. "Someone with the power to determine this hospital's future." "And right now, Dr. Greaves, I see no reason to support an institution that tolerates such blatant racism and unprofessional behavior." The gravity of the moment settled heavily around them. Angela's breath caught in her throat. A storm of emotions rose within her, relief that someone had finally seen and spoken the truth, fury over the treatment she had suffered, and, for the first time in a long while, a fragile spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. None of them yet realized that this moment would be the catalyst for a reckoning that would ripple through St. Mary's General Hospital, exposing long-buried prejudices, shattering reputations, and forcing a long overdue transformation. The silence in Mr. Edwards's room was thick, almost tangible, as the weight of his words sank in. Dr. Greaves, his face drained of color, struggled to collect himself. Angela remained still, her mind racing. Mr. Edwards, now sitting upright in his bed, leveled a hard, unwavering stare at the man who had once commanded the room. "I believe it's time we had an honest conversation about this hospital's culture, don't you agree?" Before Dr. Greaves could respond, a knock interrupted them. A nervous-looking nurse peeked in. "Dr. Greaves, the hospital administrator is looking for you." "It's urgent." He looked between Mr. Edwards and the nurse, clearly conflicted. After a brief pause, he gave a stiff nod. "We'll continue this discussion later, Mr. Edwards. Nurse Parker, you're dismissed for now." As Dr. Greaves rushed out, Angela found herself alone with Mr. Edwards. A heavy silence settled between them, charged with the weight of everything left unsaid. Nurse Parker. Mr. Edwards finally spoke, his voice softer than before. I think it's time I formally introduced myself. My name is Thomas Edwards. I'm the CEO of Healthcare United, one of the largest healthcare conglomerates in the country. Angela's eyes widened in shock. Healthcare United was a titan in the medical industry, known for its vast reach and power. Suddenly, Mr. Edwards's earlier comments about having the ability to affect a hospital's future made perfect sense. Mr. Edwards, Angela began, unsure of what to say. Please sit, he said, gesturing to the chair beside his bed. We have much to talk about. Over the next hour, Mr. Edwards explained that while his admission to St. Mary's was unexpected following a skiing accident, it had revealed deep-rooted issues within the hospital. I came here expecting nothing more than competent medical care, he said, but what I've seen is a culture of discrimination and unprofessional behavior values that completely contradict everything I stand for as a healthcare leader. He recounted in detail the subtle and overt discrimination Angela had endured, the microaggressions, the dismissive attitudes, and the toxic atmosphere that seemed to permeate the institution. Your experience, Nurse Parker, sadly, isn't unique, he said, his tone now steely with conviction. But it is unacceptable. And it ends now. As they spoke, Angela felt something shift. For the first time since joining St. Mary's, she felt truly seen. Mr. Edwards listened intently as she opened up about her experiences. With each revelation, his expression grew more somber. Thank you for your honesty, Nurse Parker, he said once she finished. Your resilience in the face of all this is admirable. But the solution isn't just individual strength, it's institutional change. And I intend to see that change happen just then. Another knock sounded at the door. The hospital administrator entered, looking flustered and anxious. Mr. Edwards, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I understand there have been some concerns raised about our hospital's practices. Please know that we take these matters very seriously, Mr. Edwards raised an eyebrow. Do you? He replied. Because from what I've seen, the only thing taken seriously here is preserving an outdated and discriminatory status quo. The administrator paled, clearly caught off guard by the bluntness of his words. I am not sure I follow. We do have diversity initiatives in place. Initiatives are not enough, Mr. Edwards interrupted firmly. What this hospital needs is a complete cultural overhaul, and that change must begin at the top. Over the following hours, Mr. Edwards laid out a comprehensive list of demands. He called for a full investigation into discriminatory practices at St. Mary's, mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff, and a complete review and restructuring of the hospital's hiring and promotion procedures. And as for Dr. Greaves, he added, his tone steely, I expect a thorough investigation into his behavior. What I witnessed today wasn't just unprofessional, it was discriminatory and potentially dangerous to patient care. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the administrator nodded silently. Of course, Mr. Edwards. We'll begin implementing these changes immediately as the day progressed. News of Mr. Edwards's true identity and the sweeping reforms he was demanding spread quickly throughout the hospital. The atmosphere in St. Mary's was electric, a mix of apprehension, curiosity, and for some, genuine hope. Angela, still trying to process the whirlwind of events, suddenly found herself in the spotlight. Colleagues who had once dismissed or overlooked her now approached her, some offering awkward apologies, others asking for her thoughts on the changes ahead. At the end of her shift, Angela returned to Mr. Edwards's room one final time. She found him sitting upright, looking tired but content. Nurse Parker, he said with a warm smile, I hope you don't mind, but I've recommended you for a seat on the hospital's newly formed Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Your voice and experiences will be vital as we move forward in transforming St. Mary's. Angela felt a wave of emotion, gratitude, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. Thank you, Mr. Edwards, she said, her voice thick with emotion. For everything, but Mr. Edwards shook his head. No thank you, Nurse Parker. Your courage and professionalism in the face of injustice have been truly inspiring. You've reminded me why I chose healthcare in the first place, to make a real difference in people's lives. As Angela left the hospital that evening, she felt a profound shift, not just in her own life, but in the future of St. Mary's as a whole. The road ahead promised challenges, but for the first time since beginning her career there, Angela felt a genuine sense of hope. What she didn't yet realize was that the events of that day would have far-reaching consequences far beyond the walls of the hospital. The story of one dedicated nurse and an unexpectedly powerful patient was about to spark a movement for change across the entire healthcare industry. In the days that followed, St. Mary's General Hospital became a whirlwind of emotion and activity. The revelation of Mr. Edwards' true identity and the bold demands he had made sent shockwaves through the institution. The polished image of the hospital began to crumble, revealing deep-rooted issues that had long gone unaddressed. On Monday morning, Angela arrived at work to find news vans lined up outside. Reporters eagerly questioned anyone willing to speak. Inside, the tension was palpable. Staff members huddled in corners, whispering anxiously. As Angela walked toward the nurses' station, she caught sight of Dr. Greaves being escorted by security to the administrative offices. Their eyes met briefly, his filled with a mix of fear and anger, before he disappeared down the hall. Angela, the voice called. She turned to see Sarah, a nurse who had once treated her with cold indifference, now approaching with an uneasy smile. "I just wanted to apologize," Sarah said, "for how I treated you. I didn't know." Angela nodded slightly, accepting the apology, though unsure how to respond. Before she could speak, the hospital's pass system crackled to life. "All staff, please report to the main auditorium for an emergency meeting in 30 minutes. Attendance is mandatory." By the time Angela entered the auditorium, it was packed. She took a seat near the back, feeling the weight of curious stares and murmurs. At the front of the room stood Mr. Edwards, now in a tailored suit, despite the cast on his arm, speaking quietly with the hospital administrator and a group of stern-looking officials. The room fell silent as Mr. Edwards stepped to the podium. His commanding presence brought an instant hush. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady and firm. "For those who don't know me, I am Thomas Edwards, CEO of Healthcare United. Over the past week, I've been a patient here at St. Mary's, recovering from a skiing accident." During his stay, Mr. Edwards had taken time to closely observe the hospital's daily routines and overall culture. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the audience. "What I saw disturbed me deeply," he said firmly. "I witnessed a workplace culture riddled with discrimination, bias, and unprofessional conduct, none of which belong in modern healthcare." A murmur rippled through the room. Some staff members shifted uneasily, while others nodded in silent agreement. "Let me be absolutely clear," Mr. Edwards continued. "What happened here, particularly how Nurse Angela Parker was treated, is not an isolated case. It reflects a larger, systemic issue that has gone unchecked for far too long." Angela could feel the entire room turning toward her. She straightened in her seat, meeting the stares with calm resolve. Mr. Edwards then laid out a set of immediate reforms: a full investigation into discriminatory practices, mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees, and a complete overhaul of hiring and promotion procedures. "And let me add this," he said, his tone hardening. "Anyone found guilty of discriminatory behavior will face serious consequences. That includes Dr. William Greaves, who has been suspended pending a formal investigation into his conduct." Gasps and whispers filled the room. Angela noticed some of Dr. Greaves's longtime allies looking stunned or angry, while others appeared quietly relieved. "I understand these changes might be uncomfortable for some," Mr. Edwards said. "Change often is. But this isn't just about moral responsibility. It's about delivering the best care possible. A diverse, inclusive, and respectful work environment leads to better outcomes for everyone." As he concluded, he made one final, unexpected announcement. "Finally, I'd like to introduce the person who will lead many of these efforts. Nurse Angela Parker has agreed to serve as St. Mary's new Chief Diversity Officer. Her experiences and insight will be crucial as we move forward." Angela was stunned. She had only discussed joining the Diversity Committee. This was far more than she anticipated. A wave of emotion, shock, pride, and nervousness rushed over her as the room erupted in applause. To Mr. Edwards' gesture, she rose and walked to the front. As she moved through the crowd, she saw many expressions: surprise, admiration, and in some cases, lingering resentment. Standing at the podium, Angela knew everything had just changed. Angela took a deep breath and addressed the room. "Thank you, Mr. Edwards," she began. "To everyone here, I want to say this. I'm not standing before you as an opponent, but as a fellow professional who believes in the promise of St. Mary's and in each of you. The journey ahead won't be simple, but I'm committed to working alongside you to build a hospital where every employee feels respected and every patient receives exceptional care, no matter their background. As she spoke, Angela saw her words resonate. Some staff nodded in agreement. Others appeared thoughtful. Even those who had once been dismissive were now paying close attention. After the meeting, Angela was surrounded by co-workers, some offering congratulations, others expressing remorse, and a few extending hesitant but sincere gestures of support. The atmosphere within the hospital had shifted. While unease lingered, a new sense of hope and potential was beginning to take root throughout the day. Angela worked with Mr. Edwards and the hospital leadership to begin rolling out the promised reforms. It was demanding, emotional work, but also energizing. For the first time since joining St. Mary's, Angela truly felt she was making a meaningful impact. That evening, as she prepared to leave, Angela spotted Mr. Edwards waiting for her near the exit. Nurse Parker. He greeted her with a smile. Or should I say Chief Diversity Officer Parker? How are you holding up? Angela laughed softly. It's been a whirlwind, Mr. Edwards. Honestly, I'm still trying to take it all in, Mr. Edwards nodded. I understand, but I want you to know your strength and integrity are exactly what St. Mary's needs right now. I have complete faith in your ability to lead this transformation. As they walked out together, Mr. Edwards grew serious. You should know this is only the beginning. I intend to introduce similar reforms across every Healthcare United facility. Your journey, Angela, could inspire real change across the entire healthcare system. Angela felt the weight of that responsibility, but not with fear. She felt inspired. I'm ready for it, Mr. Edwards, she said. Together, we'll create change that lasts. As Angela walked away, she couldn't help but reflect on the incredible transformation that had unfolded over just a few days. What began as a period of isolation and doubt had evolved into a powerful movement, one that had the potential to reshape not only St. Mary's but the broader healthcare system itself. The path ahead would be tough, filled with pushback and deeply rooted resistance, but as she glanced back at the hospital, Angela felt a renewed surge of determination. This was no longer just a job, it was a mission, a personal vow to ensure that no other healthcare worker would have to suffer the way she once had. With that sense of purpose burning within her, Angela stepped into the evening, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The transformation at St. Mary's had begun, ushering in a new era in the fight for equality and inclusion in healthcare. In the months that followed Mr. Edwards' pivotal announcement, St. Mary's General Hospital underwent a sweeping transformation under Angela's leadership as Chief Diversity Officer. Backed by Mr. Edwards' unwavering support, the hospital's toxic environment began to shift, replaced by a culture grounded in respect and inclusivity. While the mandatory diversity and inclusion training was initially met with skepticism, over time it sparked reflection, opened minds, and began to change hearts. Following a thorough investigation, Dr. Greaves was removed from his position, sending a firm and public message. Discrimination would no longer be tolerated. As word of St. Mary's transformation spread, Angela became a sought-after speaker at healthcare conferences and diversity panels. 1 year after Mr. Edwards' life-changing visit to the hospital, Angela stood on the stage of a packed national healthcare conference. A year ago, she began, I was a nurse on the brink of walking away. Today, I stand before you as living proof that change is not only possible but powerful. One voice can truly make a difference. She shared the journey of St. Mary's, acknowledging the obstacles, but also celebrating the breakthroughs. The lives changed, and the culture rebuilt. After her talk, Mr. Edwards, now fully recovered, approached her with a proud smile. Angela, he said warmly, you've come a long way from the nurse I met a year ago. They spoke about St. Mary's progress and the ripple effect it was having throughout the Healthcare United network. Mr. Edwards shared that several other hospitals had already begun adopting similar diversity initiatives. You know, he added, when I first checked into St. Mary's after my skiing accident, I never imagined it would lead to all this. You've not only transformed one hospital, you've reignited my own passion for creating change in this industry. As Angela prepared to return to St. Mary's, she took a moment to reflect on the incredible journey she had made from a frustrated, isolated nurse to a powerful voice for change and a respected leader. She had come a long way, though the road ahead was still full of challenges. Angela now carried with her a deep sense of hope and unwavering determination. Upon her arrival, she was welcomed by Sarah, once a distant colleague, now a trusted ally. The hospital felt different, alive with renewed energy. Staff members were working together in ways they never had before, communicating openly and supporting one another. In the main lobby, Angela paused in front of a beautiful new mural. It portrayed a diverse team of healthcare professionals working hand in hand. Below it, a plaque read, "Diversity is our strength. Inclusion is our commitment. Compassion is our calling." Back in her office, Angela settled in, ready to take on the next challenge. She smiled, knowing that while the transformation of St. Mary's was a powerful beginning, the real work changing hearts, minds, and entire systems was just getting started. And she was ready. One day at a time, she would continue to fight for a truly inclusive healthcare system. What part of Angela's journey spoke to you the most? Was it her resilience in the face of injustice, or Mr. Edwards' unexpected support? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing to my channel. I pour my heart into creating these emotional stories, and your support means the world. Thank you for being part of this journey.